Welcome to the IBNS educational program. This time we have an interesting a presentation by Michael Souza from Vancouver, and I leave the space directly to him. So, Michael, please.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to do this presentation. I'm going to do a presentation on the story of Canada's Devil's Face banknotes. For almost 60 years, Canada's 1954 banknotes have been a subject of discussion throughout the numismatic community. Detailed lines in the engraving of Queen Elizabeth II's hair were thought to resemble the face of a devil, leading to notions of controversy within the government and monarchy. The famed devil's face was eventually removed from the original engraving, and new banknotes were issued bearing a modified portrait of the monarch. While tales of the source and reason behind this artistic blunder swirl, primary sources reveal that this was in fact a mere coincidence and may not have been the instant controversy that is now taken for granted by collectors. What we see at the bottom are the banknotes that were issued in various denominations from $1 to $1,000. Later, I will show you, later at the end of the presentation, I'll show you the actual banknotes. The story of the Devil's Face portrait for the 1954 banknote series actually begins in 1951, when Queen Elizabeth II was photographed by Yusuf Karsh, one of Canada's leading portrait photographers. During the 1951 portrait sitting, Queen Elizabeth was photographed in many poses, in all of which she wore a royal tiara. If we look at figure 1 here, that's what the tiara looked like, and that's a big portrait of the Queen. Here's a blow-up of that picture, and it's Queen Elizabeth II, photographed by Yusuf Karsh, wearing a royal tiara. When one of these images was selected for the upcoming series of banknotes, the removal of the tiara was required. Rather than going to the difficulty of having the Queen sit for another photograph, the image was instead sent to Brigden's Limited, formerly known as the Toronto Engraving Company, a premier engraving and graphic arts firm located in Toronto, and this is shown in figure 2. The skilled artists at Brigden's retouched the original negative number 521976, which required the illustration of the Queen's hair where the tiara once sat. It is important to note, however, that minimal retouching was required in the curls around Her Majesty's left ear. And here's a blow-up of figure 2. This is Brigden's Limited, which existed from 1912 to 1955 and was at the Richmond Street West, north side of University Avenue. This is in the interior of the company, showing Charles Comfort at left, wearing the eye shades, Tom Mitchell at back right, and R. York Wilson in foreground. The date of the picture is 1925. Once the photographic portrait of Queen Elizabeth was finalized, preparations for the banknote began at the British American Banknote Company. Art director George Arthur Gunderson was given the task of recreating the portrait as an engraving for the final banknote production. Gunderson's engraving reveals a detailed replication of the retouched Brigden's portrait, with no sign of modification of the Queen's hairstyle. Now, I'm going to use my cursor, and if you see, this is the portrait that Gunderson came up with, and if you use your imagination, you can see two horns here, the eye of the devil, the other eye, the hooked nose, and the mouth. This is the blow-up of art director George Arthur Gunderson's picture, and he was given a task of recreating the portrait as an engraving for the final banknote production. With confirmation of the banknote series design, Production of the paper money began in early 1954 at both the American Banknote Company and the Canadian Banknote Company. The Bank of Canada notified the Canadian public of their release, in some cases by way of newspaper advertisements, such as this one from the Newmarket Era Express, dated Thursday, September 9, 1954, highlighting the change in design and additional security features. This is shown in Figure 4. And here is the blow-up of that ad. And that was what was published and released to the public. I won't read the ad. Following the fall release of the banknotes in 1954, nothing could be found in any immediate mention of controversy in popular media. It was not until almost 2 years later, in the spring of 1956, that the notion of a devil's face was brought into the spotlight. On March 27, 1956, it was reported by the Toronto Daily Star on page 3 that a devil's face leering from the Queen's curls was brought to Common's attention. And this is shown in Figure 5 as an excerpt from the newspaper. I'll show you an enlargement. So this is remove devil in Queen's curls by changing currency engraving. In this picture, you can see the devil's face if you use your imagination quite clearly. Here's the horns, one eye, the side view of the other eye, the hook nose, and the mouth. And the caption says, "Devil's face leering from the Queen's curls on Canadian currency has been blotted out by retouching engravings." This sparked several mentions in Canadian and American newspapers in the following weeks, each devoting a small statement which recognized the issue and reported that the Bank of Canada officials had been made aware of the fact. As noted in the April 5, 1956 issue of the Kingsville Reporter, only 4 or 5 people have brought to meaning the Bank of Canada's, attention the fact that a face is clearly discernible in the lines of the Queen's hair. This is shown in Figure 6. Now, unfortunately, I'll show you a blow-up, but this is not a very good excerpt because it's very dark. And he says, engraving error appears on Canadian currency. Unfortunately, this picture of the devil's face is not as clear as in the previous newspaper excerpt. With little media fanfare, the portrait on the 1954 notes was modified by an engraver, Yves Barrel of the Canadian Banknote Company. The highlight found in the Queen's hair were darkened, erasing any sign of the devil's face, as noted in the July 4, 1957 issue of the Ottawa Citizen, and this is shown in Figure 7. With the new engraving, modified banknotes were issued by the Bank of Canada. However, the original 1954 notes were never recalled and remained in circulation. So the previous devil's face notes that showed the eyes, the horns, the hook nose, and the mouth were then darkened to remove the eye, the details of the eyes. The nose was gone, and the mouth was mainly lightened, you might say, so it wasn't so evident. I'll show you a clip of the newspaper clipping. It's a devil no longer in royal hair. The devil has been taken out of the Queen's hair on the Canadian $1 bill. The bill, bearing a photograph of Queen Elizabeth approved by her, was put into circulation by the Bank of Canada in 1954. Sometime later, some eagle-eyed persons noticed that some of the royal curls gave the appearance of a sharp-nosed face in the Queen's hair. The face became known as the devil in the Queen's hair, and there was criticism of the photograph used for the bill. The same printing quirk has appeared on bills of higher denomination. New $1 bills now being issued carry the same photograph, but the Queen's hair has been retouched to remove the devil. Bank of Canada officials said today the plate for printing the bills had to be altered only slightly. The bills are printed by 2 Ottawa companies, the Canadian Banknote Company and the American Banknote Company. Discussion of the Devil's Face banknote appears to have subsided in 1957. Newly issued modified portraits were brought into circulation and no further media comments appeared. The notion of a controversy did not surface again until April 30th, 1959, almost 2 years after the Ottawa Citizen article. The article by the Canadian press cited direct quotes from Mr. Alan Clenman, a director of the Canadian Numismatic Association, and the debate began. And this is shown in Figure 8. I'll show you an enlargement of this newspaper article. Victoria CP. Alan Clenman, a director of the Canadian Numismatic Association, said Wednesday it is unfortunate that the government is now releasing 1954 banknotes which bear a likeness of a devil's face in a queen's hair. Clenman said the matter is to be taken up by the association, which has headquarters in Ottawa and claims 1,400 members across Canada. He said the disfigurement of the Queen's portrait on the bills was noted several years ago, and in 1956, the government decided to withhold the bills. Now, he said 10 million of them in varying denominations are being distributed to banks across Canada. He added that the bills, some of which were released at the time, have been thought so rare that speculators were selling $1 bills for $1.50. Clenman said he feels that the disfigurement of the Queen's hair was, quote, no accident. Engraving companies brought many engravers from Europe at the end of the war, and who knows what thoughts they harbor, he said, adding that those responsible might be trying to put across a subtle message to the public. Authorities said in Ottawa today the banknotes have never been withdrawn from circulation. Chenman's commentary of the Devil's Face notes was motivated by his feeling that the disfigurement of the Queen's hair was no accident. To further his position, Clenman goes on to elicit the idea that engraving companies brought many engravers from Europe at the end of the war, and who knows what thoughts they harbor, that those responsible might be trying to put across a subtle message to the public. This is the first mention in the media of a conspiracy associated with the Devil's Face image. The story was picked up by the Calgary Herald and the Regina Leader-Post, disseminating the notion that an insider had infiltrated the engraving process to intentionally deface the image of the Canadian monarch. This is shown in Figure 9, and here are the two newspaper clippings, which I will not read. One is from the Calgary Herald, and the other one is the Regina Leader-Post. Through in-depth analysis of primary sources of the time, it is evident that the Devil's Face occurred by sheer coincidence. In looking at the original Karsh photograph, the highlights in Queen Elizabeth's hair are the same as those that appear in the engraving, and could ultimately be interpreted as a devil's face by some. The exacting reproduction by Gunderson is only a statement to his outstanding artistic skill, as evidenced by the meticulous reproduction of subtle nuances in a monochromatic portrait. If not for the discerning and imaginative eye of 4 or 5 sources who registered the issue with the Bank of Canada, this controversy may never have been brought to light. As for Clenman's statement of European engravers with ulterior motives, it should be noted that George Gunderson was born a Canadian citizen and lived in Ottawa for most of his life. As a noted figure in the numismatic community, perhaps Clenman sensationalized the story to enhance the collector value of the 1954 banknotes, giving rise to the fable that still remains today. The truth about the 1954 Devil's Face series of notes is that it is a classic example of the circumstances that can make a collector item which follows the most basic rules of supply and demand economics. The supply of these notes was cut short by the Bank of Canada's action to modify the portrait in the first place, thereby forestalling what would have certainly been a very long and prolific series of banknotes. Also, the perceived controversy of the Devil's Face itself, whether created or merely highlighted by individuals such as Alan Clenman, brought the notes into the public eye, thereby creating a demand. These two factors have served not only to increase the value of the 1954 Devil's Face series, but to create a must-have category of banknotes for any serious collector of Canadian currency. And here's the banknotes, and these are reproduced with permission from the Bank of Canada's National Currency Collection. Here's a copy of the $1 banknote with the devil's face, and it's 00001, one of the first notes. And you notice this is a replacement note. There's an asterisk next to the AA right over here. And the replacement notes for these series, if you can get them brand new, they are extremely expensive, into the tens of thousands. This is the front of the one, and this is the reverse of the $1 note. Here's the $2 note. Again, low serial number, and again, it's a replacement note with an asterisk before the serial number. Again, a very valuable note. This is the face, and this is the reverse of the two. This is the $5 note, a real specimen. This one, it's got all zeros for the serial number. And as you can see, again, they have the horns, the eyes, the hook nose, and the mouth. This is the face of the $5 note, and this is the back of the $5 note, the reverse. And the $10 note, again, it's a replacement with the asterisk preceding the serial number. This is the face, and here's the reverse. A $20 note, this is not a replacement, but extremely low serial number, number 8. This is the face of the 20. This is the reverse of the 20. This is a $50 note. Again, only note number 19. Not a replacement, there's no asterisk. The reverse of the $50 banknote. The $100 banknote. Again, low serial number, number 7. Is the face of the note. Again, not a replacement. Excuse me. And this is the reverse of the $100 note. And finally, the $1,000 note, note number 9, not a replacement. And this is the face of the note. And this is the back of the note. And that brings an end to the presentation. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.